And how did Donald Trump sort of get away with not providing his tax returns?
Well, to start with, King, the reason that he got away with it is, based on the result of the election, people didn't care. They weren't concerned about Donald Trump's tax returns. You know what they were concerned about? Their own tax returns.
Right.
And what electing either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton was going to mean to them. So obviously, how you do on your tax return relates to how the economy is going. So I think that Trump's tax returns, although there was an effort to make that an issue during the campaign, it never really materialized enough to make a difference. So I believe the reason that Donald Trump did not release his tax returns was not because he was looking to hide something. Let's look at what that New York Times story did when they came out with Donald Trump had a $915 million loss back in 1995. So I believe they had 3 pages of his tax returns. And the media went wild with what it means. And keep this in mind. Most people can't read a tax return, let alone a tax return that's as complex as Donald Trump's. So I think he and his team understood that if they were going to release tax returns that are as complex as his, it was going to be subject to interpretation that wasn't exactly accurate, and there was going to be messaging sent out to the public that was going to hurt him with no basis. That's what I believe was the motivation if he was not under audit. Now, let's examine that issue. You know, the IRS actually has a group, let's call them a SWAT team for the case of this discussion, that actually goes out and audits the super wealthy, like Donald Trump. And the reason that they do that is because when they find an issue on a tax return at that level, well, then there's some great return on investment as far as bringing tax dollars in, as opposed to the regular person who's making whatever they're making, and they find an issue on the tax returns. Maybe they get a couple $1,000s. You find an issue on a tax return of the super wealthy, it could mean millions. So the IRS is actually better off spending their time auditing those types of tax returns. So if you ask me, I do believe Donald Trump is probably under audit.
Do you see this in the future, that other candidates will not be releasing their tax information? It obviously did not harm Trump.
Well, Trump may have very well set a new precedent in this area, because winning without releasing the tax returns, you know, he proved that you don't have to do it. So we may very well have a situation where future candidates are going to decide not to release their tax returns. And if they have the type of wealth that Donald Trump has, they may very well be under audit. In my practice, King, we have some very, very wealthy clients. And when they are subject to audit, it's not just 1 year, it's multiple years. And because of the complexities of those returns, it does take a long time for those returns to be audited. And I'll just throw in one other thing. You know, what's interesting is that because back in the 70s, Richard Nixon had issues on his tax returns, it's now mandatory that the president and the vice president have their returns subject to examination. So if Donald Trump is going to continue to take the position that he's not releasing any tax returns that are being audited, he's not going to be releasing any tax returns during his presidency either.
I guess my question is with the health care being a pivotal playing a pivotal role in your taxes, there are really tax ramifications where somebody who maybe have been employed for a certain period of time that always got a tax refund, their tax refund's going right back to the IRS to pay the fine for Obamacare. It's a vicious cycle where you're getting nailed for not having the health insurance.
Well, King, some say it'll be easier for Donald Trump to build the wall than it's going to be for him to fix the healthcare system. And that may very well be true. And when you look at how Obamacare was crafted from a tax standpoint. It was sold as the rich are going to pay for this, pay their fair share. So the taxes, and there are a lot of them, and we're not going to get into listing them because we'll run out of time. But most of the taxes were really geared towards individuals who were making $200,000 or more, or families making $250,000 or more. And that really comprises a small number of the population. I don't know if that's the 1% group, but a small number. Certainly those people being upset about paying more taxes related to the healthcare system were not going to swing the election. So let's talk about the vast majority of people who were impacted. It wasn't that there was so much a direct tax. Yes, there was a mandate that everyone must have health insurance or be subject to penalty on their tax return. So they would feel it there. So having to buy insurance, well, that in effect, per the Supreme Court, was a tax. But where people really felt it was rising premiums, higher deductibles. And I think what really bothered them is that they had to change their doctors because that was an absolute promise that it wouldn't happen. And when it did happen and people develop a bond with their doctor, there's trust there. And when that trust had to be broken because of Obamacare, I think that's what really motivated people to, quite frankly, revolt in the voting booth against Obamacare.
Frank has a question for Dan Geltrude, our CPA, on the phone with us.
Oh, good morning, Dan. And
morning,
if you ever
Frank.
got over to the Irish pub, come on by. We'll give you a little tour.
Thank you.
My question, basically for some years now, the interest rates in our country have been historically low. I believe it's certainly bad for the economy of America. And what do you think the Trump presidency's effect will have on interest rates? Can we see interest rates maybe going up through his presidency to get to a point where people who have investments will actually make some money someday?
Great question. Donald Trump, for quite some time, has talked about that bubble of the Feds keeping the interest rates low. And the reason that they keep the interest rates low, not to get into all the complexity, is because of a fragile economy. We have not really had true recovery. Better than it was, but certainly fragile. So if Donald Trump is successful in rebuilding the economy, and he had some successes this week, right, with Apple and with Ford, making sure that they were going to be keeping manufacturing jobs in the United States. If we start to get real economic recovery, I believe we will start to see a tick up in those interest rates. And that is going to be really, really helpful for those people that are trying to save, and specifically retirees who are relying on that nest egg to try to produce some kind of income that they can live on. So I think we are going to see interest rates rising. I really do believe that.
Now, Trump has said that they're being kept artificially low to help President Obama's legacy. Do you buy into that at all?
Well, that's... I know that's quite political, and that's something that Trump said on the campaign trail. But there are people who I believe in government and in the Fed that are looking and truly believe that is the case. I mean, let's not forget it was Greenspan who was really pushing that concept of continually lowering the interest rate, and that certainly wasn't motivated by Barack Obama. But I guess it's a conspiracy theory that could be true. I don't necessarily buy into it, though, King.
For our great listening audience here in Atlantic and Cape May County, markets of New Jersey, and people listening all over our great country and great world here on the internet, please, anything that you would like to plug. I know right after you were on our show the last time, you were on Neil Cavuto's show on Fox, so we have a national superstar on the phone with us. But by all means, how can people reach you? And I know you have a website, so please do plug that right now.
Well, the best way to reach me is through our firm's website, which is Geltrude.com, Geltrude.com. We'll be glad to have new clients, and we look forward to meeting more of your listeners, King.
We appreciate you coming on, and certainly when we have more tax questions, we will be on the phone with you. And again, thanks a lot for your insight into the Trump's tax returns, and of course Obamacare, which is affecting everybody as we scramble around and try to get enrolled as the open enrollment is right now.
Well, thank you, King. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Have a good morning, sir.
Dan Geltrude, check it in. Check him out. Geltrude.com is his website. And we are going to take a quick commercial break.